Hello, everyone. So, suddenly I had the desire to talk about a word that I have been hearing thrown around a little bit more often than usual. This is going to be one of those videos where I don't have a script and I end up just ranting and raving about things. But I'm going to implore all of you to hang tight because this definitely is going to be interesting. So, if you've been watching YouTube for the year of 2018, you may have known about Shane Dawson's documentary on Logan and Jake Paul. Well, in part 2 of his docuseries, he talks about Jake Paul as a sociopath. And Logan Paul as well, I guess. And he asks his friend to come in and discuss what a sociopath is. Now, I'm here to tell you today that I am going to speak to you from personal experience as a sociopath and tell you why everything that they told you, well, at least most of it, is a lie. Okay? So let's go into this one because this is going to be interesting. Sociopaths.
Yes.
You know, you came on my podcast and you were very clued in. You're very intuitive about all that. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about this, because I feel like if anybody could tell me what to look for, it would be you. Because I feel like, do you spot them?
You can feel them. I don't know if you can really spot them.
Okay, stop. You can spot them. You can feel them. Not if they're any good. Not if they're any good. No. I'm just gonna let it keep going.
So besides the feeling, what are the characteristics, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot
Yeah, let's actually talk about what the actual substance is of a sociopath.
to it. A lot of it is just the main thing that people talk about is like they have no empathy. And I think that's a hard thing for people to actually fully understand because most of us don't have this issue. So we feel for other people.
Okay, stop. By saying that, well, they don't have empathy. They are not like you and me. It's a very contradictory and fucked up sentence to say. They're not like you and me, so they're bad people. But wait, you just said you had empathy. So I lack in seeing this from you. And also, well, I'll get into what I actually think about this after I let them go for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And we feel all day. I feel pissed off. I feel excited. I feel disappointed, whatever. They don't have any of that. For instance.
Okay, so what she just basically said was that not only do we have a lack of empathy, but we also have a lack of emotion. This is terribly untrue, because every person has these feelings. Whether they tell you about them or whether they have outwards manifestations of these emotions is an entirely different story.
They just have no empathy. And I know I'm talking about
Also love how they censored that. That was great.
like bad things, but also good things. Like they just don't, like imagine if you lived in a world in your brain where anything that happened to other people, you didn't really care about it at all. You didn't care how they felt. You didn't care what happened to them, as long as it didn't affect you.
The moments many feared would be their last.
Ooh.
It's not that we don't care about other people in what they experience. It's that we have no way to fix the problem, and if we were going to be a bleeding heart about everybody, we would live sad and miserable lives. So, to be fair, the most efficient use of our time is to handle the situation that we see around us. Sure, we can care about certain situations outside of our immediate realm, but it's not going to take priority. Especially because a lot of us don't have the means to necessarily fix the problem.
That is terrifying.
Yeah, that's hence the, like, ugh, that feeling. Like, ugh.
Is that a mental
disorder.
What is it?
Technically speaking, a lot of like clinicians like myself would call it antisocial personality disorder.
So what are like the bullet points, for example, like in a book, what would it say?
What a lovely way to show that sociopaths are totally normal people, while making us look to be mass murderers with that one. I know Shane got a lot of flack for the editing on this video, but I'm gonna keep it rolling because personally, that's not cool, dude. But you know, it's that sociopath in me that has a lack of feeling for everything. Moving on.
Sociopaths believe that like the law doesn't apply to them and like the rules don't apply to them. They're like above it and they're so important to everybody else that like they'll get away with it. Like nobody will care.
Kind of, sort of. See, now, what she neglects to mention is that there are actually two forms of antisocial personality disorder. Psychopathy and sociopathy. Psychopathy would be the one that people would be more likened to a criminal behavior. It's also some of the hardest things to diagnose. Because how do you tell? You really can't. You just know that someone's an asshole. As a comment to, well, they don't think the law applies to them. No. They know the law applies to them. They just couldn't care less.
So they always just think they're better, bigger, more important than everybody else. Like, for instance, failure to conform to social norms with respect to lawful behavior. So they're usually like
getting into fights.
She ended up starting a full-on fight with Nikki.
Stealing.
After stealing a tube of lip gloss, Megan Fox went on a crime spree at her local Walmart.
And it could go as far as murder.
Simpson arrested for the murder of his wife Nicole and her friend Ron Goldman.
But then deceitfulness, indicated by repeating lying, using aliases, conning others. So
I'm going to pause it right there before we go on to that next part. To the refusal to adhere to social norms. I'm not necessarily sure that you could necessarily say that comparing OJ to Megan Fox is really a fair comparison. A person basically caught somebody cheating and killed both the perpetrator and then the other dude. The other one stole some lip gloss and then went on a stealing spree in a Walmart. Somehow I don't think these are necessarily the same thing. I guess we have to institute levels of antisocial personality disorders.
using anything they can to get their needs met. People aren't people, they're just tools to be used in their life for their game, whatever it is.
Okay, so yes and no. I can almost guarantee you that you have met the same people over and over again in situations where you didn't care about them. I want you all to imagine, if you guys have ever traveled for long periods of time, how many of the same people do you think are traveling in the same exact airport that you travel through at every holiday time of the year? How many of the same people do you think you actually have seen and you don't realize? That's kind of how these people work. It is as fucked up as it sounds, but not entirely. And they kind of characterize it as a intentionally insidious way to do things. Like they are legitimately trying to argue that what is going through every sociopath's head is that I am going to do a bad thing, but I don't care. And you, random unsuspecting citizen, you are going to help me, but you won't know about it either, because I control your mind, or I'm going to lie and cheat and steal my way so that you can help me. To a certain extent, this is true. However, this is not everybody. Some sociopaths are actually benevolent. Let's keep going.
So, like, to a sociopath, the world is a chess game.
Yes.
And all the pieces are people.
And they don't care about them. There's no empathy for them. Remember that. They're just tools.
False. they do have empathy for their tools. If you have a broken tool, it can no longer be a functional tool for you to achieve your goal. You need to protect those things. So yes, you do have care, but not as a human. At least that's the hypothetical situation you are bringing forward here. Make sure that you at least follow through with some consistency.
Can I use that to help me get what I want? So, for instance, people who would have antisocial personality disorder will be extremely rude to any help people. So they tend to be like really quick and like angry and irritable and like push them off.
Unlikely that they would be crude, short, or rude to people who are literally employed to be helpful. That seems like a gross mischaracterization of somebody who thinks of everyone as a tool. If you are the help, your job is to help me. I'm going to make sure that you do help me. So if that is a waiter, I don't mind grabbing your attention and asking for that extra glass of water if I want an extra glass of water. I understand you might be busy. Take your time. I'll be here for a little bit, but don't forget. Cool. Thanks. Moving on.
So, like, for example, if it was a YouTuber, they would probably be rude to fans. No, because they want something.
They give them something, yeah. Because the main two things that they usually want is power and money.
But if a fan died or a fan was hurt, they wouldn't care.
Not really. But if it meant that they could make a video about it and get more views and get more fans.
Jake Paul's, I don't know how to...
Now that one I'm not quite sure about. That seems like a stretch. If you'll still feel a small bit of care, even if you're the worst kind of person. If somebody helped you gain either, was it power or money, you'll still care if that person is no longer being that way. That's just fucked. You can't assume that. That's a little much.
Then they also are impulsive, so failure to plan ahead. They'll want to do things and then not do things on a whim, which is what makes them a little dangerous. I always think impulsive is like a dangerous thing for both.
I wouldn't say that impulsive is somebody looking for the best opportunity to do something bad. That seems a little off. More or less, impulsive in my head means more of you will go and do something if it strikes your interest. But in the context that this video is being presented in, it sounds as if they are inferring that a impulsive person is not only dangerous, but the impulsive decision they will inevitably make is likely malicious. You could also say that somebody who enjoys skateboarding is impulsive, because the behavior of going forward onto a risk-seeking or thrill-seeking adventure is inherently impulsive and would be a risky behavior by some clinician's thought process. But you wouldn't consider them sociopaths, but they would still be impulsive. See where the differences is? But I'm going to keep going.
Them and the people around them, you know?
That sounds like someone we know. But they don't have emotions, so, like, they wouldn't cry.
They might if they thought it made them fit in or, like, get what they want, because they're deceitful.
Okay, this is where I like to... This is what actually started to bother me. So before I let them keep going, I want to make sure I hit on this. So, they think we have a lack of empathy, which means that we don't necessarily care about other individuals. And this conversation has likened the idea that we actually do not possess emotions towards other people, if it not be for our end goal. But even if something bad were to happen to a tool of ours, that we would not care because the tool's life has ended. But what she's about to say now is probably my biggest gripe with the idea of a sociopath. And then I'm going to jump off of Shane Dawson's video because I'm not going to go through this entire thing. And then I'm just going to talk to you guys about this. So let's keep going.
Okay. So sociopaths... So they don't have emotions. Do they pretend to have emotions?
Yes, because they'll mimic to fit in to get what they want. You and I aren't going to respond well to someone just asking us for something. We'd have to feel emotionally involved in some way in order to do something that maybe we normally wouldn't do. Mm-hmm. So in order to get people to be the tools that they need, they'll mimic behavior that they know will elicit the response they want.
So they're pretending to laugh, they're pretending to cry. Are they just like kind of mimicking what they've seen in like movies?
Yeah, movies, other people around them. So they learn like what gets people ahead, what type of behaviors, what type of emotional responses get what they want.
Now, for example, like, not to, I don't want to say this person's a sociopath because I don't know, but like Logan Paul, for example, the dead body thing was bad. To me, the weirdest part of it was when he was talking about it in the video and talking about suicide prevention. There was like a really loud, sad song playing the whole time. It was
Like I said
Pop me kettle.
earlier, suicide, mental illnesses, depression.
to me, it was like, oh, this is sad. I'll put a sad song. So, not saying he's a sociopath, but like that's something that a sociopath would do, right? Be like,
Totally.
oh,
Yeah, because that would be like mimicking behavior. We have to think of like, because that would make it feel, it elicit the response maybe he's wanting.
Suicide is not
Yeah, he got a lot of slack from this behavior on this video in particular. So, yeah.
if a YouTuber is a sociopath and they're making an apology video,
I first want to apologize to my brother.
so they just type in sad and they pick one,
I in no way meant to like hurt his feelings.
would they not know what a sad song was?
They might know it just because of society. Think about like radio DJs will be like, oh, here's a sad song about a lost lover.
How dare you have such a bad opinion of us? We don't know what sad is. Fuck off. Yes, we know what sad is. We don't know what sad is. Maybe society teaches us what sad is. Oh my god.
I mean, I don't know. So they probably learned, but I think what they don't have knowledge of is what it is to experience that emotion.
Okay, done here. So, this is the part where I get really, really pissed off about people when they start calling somebody a sociopath. So, you've accused somebody of not having emotions, but you say that they can mimic emotions or fake emotions in order to elicit the response from somebody else. This woman makes it the case that somebody would hear it or visualize, or even the way they described it, kind of stalk somebody to understand what a certain feeling is. And then they would learn that feeling and then mimic it. And that is what gets sociopaths the manipulation ability. The ability to turn on a dime, flip the switch, and turn on the sad emotion to get the sad react, right? Have you ever considered that a person doesn't need to necessarily watch or learn a behavior from somebody, but is in fact so in tune with their own emotions that they know how they would react to a certain situation, and so they evoke the emotion that would make them upset? A sociopath can actually be acting as a mediator to themselves when interacting with somebody else. So what I mean by that is, as I mentioned, if I am a sociopath, I want somebody else to feel sad for me. What would make me sad to hear from somebody else? Me personally. There's any number of possibilities. So if I said that to another person, assuming they have empathy, which I assume everyone does, then I would feel sad. And then they would feel sad. That is how true manipulation works for a sociopath. The problem here is that they have characterized sociopaths as this really big bad guy. Big block red letters saying, this person is evil. You get that pit in your stomach when you're around them, when you see them. I doubt it. I highly doubt it. Because some people are sociopaths, but not malicious. Some people are sociopaths because that was how they had to defend themselves against the things that they were brought up with. Some people grew up in certain environments that if they didn't play a game from somebody else playing a game on them, then it would be much worse off for them if they didn't hide or manipulate or play a game back. But if you're doing it for survival, then you're not malicious. But in this case, and how most people understand it, a sociopath is simply a person doing something malicious, doesn't conform to society's rules because they think they're above them. No, we don't think that we're above the rules. We just don't necessarily believe the rules are just. We are deceitful, maybe. I'm talking to you from an avatar, from behind a internet alias. So in that aspect, sure. But to think that all sociopaths have such little care for their common man shows very little care for your common man. This is an ongoing trope, if you haven't noticed, of people demonizing others for not being exactly like them, assuming the worst out of everybody who's perhaps different, or perhaps coming from a different point of view or a different way of doing things. Now, by no means do I think that Shane, Logan, Jake, I don't watch enough of their content to make a informed judgment about them, but I couldn't say with confidence that they are most definitely a sociopath. But I know too well that there are other possibilities to explain why somebody does something. And one of the things that I want to bring up is actually psychopathy, specifically. From Psych today, because I didn't feel like going through the DSM, psychopathy is among the most difficult disorders to spot. A psychopath can appear normal, even charming. Underneath, he lacks conscience and empathy. Not that he lacks it, he doesn't care about it, making him manipulative, volatile, and often, but by no means always, criminal. They are objects of popular fascination and clinical anguish. Adult psychopathy is largely impervious to treatment, though programs are in place to treat callous, unemotional youths in hopes of preventing them from maturing into psychopaths. Perhaps the folks that you are trying to treat just need a mentor, somebody to guide them on a better path. Perhaps they don't need treatment, they don't need a psychologist. Maybe they need, dare I say, a male figure in their lives, since you were so quick to assign pronouns to this psychopath. The term psychopath and sociopath are often used interchangeably, but in correct parlance, a sociopath refers to a person with antisocial tendencies that are ascribed to social or environmental factors, whereas psychopathic traits are more innate. Though a chaotic or violent upbringing may tip the scales for those already predisposed to behave psychopathically, both constructs are most closely represented in the DSM as antisocial personality disorder. Now, I did take a look at the antisocial personality disorder as well on the same website, because it's easily available to me. And the symptoms are disregard for society's laws. What is to say that those society's laws are just? Violation of the physical or emotional rights of others. Who's to say that you have emotional rights? Physical rights, sure, maybe. I don't know necessarily the generic form that this takes is kind of skewed, but emotional rights? I don't know necessarily that you have an emotional right to be happy or sad or of any emotion. Maybe an emotional right to be happy. At least you deserve to be happy. I don't know if you have a right to it. Lack of stability in job and home life. Yeah, that's I'm gonna put a pin in that one. Irritability or aggressiveness. I would be upset too if somebody mischaracterized me. Lack of remorse. Maybe, but if the law is unjust, as we had mentioned previously, would you really have remorse? Consistent irresponsibility. Again, sure, makes sense. That one I'll take with that. Recklessness or impulsivity. Wouldn't say that is a really, a key to a psychopath per se, but hey, I'm not a clinician. Deceitfulness. Deceitfulness. I'm still very upset with how they characterize deceitful behaviors, so I'm gonna say that the generalization mentioned here is doing them more injustice than justice. And a childhood diagnosis consistent or symptoms consistent with conduct disorder, which essentially means ADHD. I'm sorry, but I'm not necessarily going to say that this is a fair condition to accuse anybody of, especially when this paragraph here mentions antisocial personality disorder is much more common in males than in females. The highest prevalence of antisocial personality disorder is found among males who abuse alcohol or drugs, or who are in prisons or other forensic settings. Yeah, I think I would have a lack of stability in job or home life if I was actually addicted to alcohol or drugs. I would probably also have an issue, a disregard for society's laws, if I was already a drug addict or if I was already in prison. Irritability and aggressiveness, probably because I'm already in prison or addicted to alcohol or drugs. A recklessness and impulsivity probably led to those other two things. I have a really hard time understanding which order these go in. And by I have a hard time understanding, it's more like I have a hard time accepting the order that these are presented in. The highest prevalence of antisocial personality disorder is found among males who abuse alcohol or drugs or who are in prisons. So you find people who are in these positions and then diagnose them with antisocial personality disorder. It's kind of a shoo-in, isn't it? It's kind of all the legwork is done for you, isn't it? The fact that they're in there already checks most of these. What I'm going to leave you guys with is that I don't necessarily think that being a sociopath is a bad thing per se. And I really think that because of Shane's depiction of a sociopath in this setting has really set a lot of people off in the wrong direction when dealing with people. Because now people will look at folks like Logan and label him sociopath. And then if anybody who also can fit in the label of sociopath does anything, it's going to come back around. It's going to be like, oh, you're like Logan, or you're like Jake, or you're like some other bad person who is a sociopath. This labeling thing really, really has to stop.